Pants are kind of fun. Page 203, chapter 10. Let's talk about a few things at the beginning of the chapter first, and then we'll do the demo. Page 204, check this out. It's pretty self-explanatory, but they talk about all the terms of the different components of the pant. You're familiar with a bunch of them. Waist, high hip, low hip, same as the skirt. Crotch level, we'll talk about this when we do measurements. This crotch level is like outside, out seam minus inseam is the crotch level. Knee, thigh, calf. Make sure when you measure someone, you try and replicate what we did at school with elastic or a ribbon or something around the waist so it's stationary, because you will, go down 4.5 from the bottom of your ribbon, if that's what you're using, to the high hip, 8.5 for the low hip, and then you'll go all the way down to the knee from the bottom of the tape. They give you these measurements where once you go and measure where the knee is, you go up 8 inches for thigh, down 5 inches for the calf. Those are kind of standard. So check these out. And let me just briefly go through measuring, starting on page 205. Now, first, and you've done these before, waist, high hip, and low hip. Again, 4.5 down, 4 down. Use stickers or pins on clothing or something to make sure that each side is, you're parallel to the floor all the way around. Okay, number 4 is a low waist. In case you want to do a low waist pant, there's not a specific measurement down, so you'll note how far down you did a low waist measurement. Okay, 5 is the out seam. So again, you measure from the bottom of the tape to the floor. They say to measure both, and if one is longer, take the longer one. Okay, 5 is out seam. Inseam, what do they say? Have the client hold the measuring tape at the base of the torso, inside and against one leg, and measure the longer leg if there is one. Standing with their feet their feet 4 inches apart. Okay. Crotch depth. I talked about that over here a little bit. The crotch depth is the out seam minus the inseam is the cross depth. So you don't really measure that. You're just doing a calculation. Crotch length, though, have the client hold the tape measure at the base of the center front waist elastic. Bring the tape measure between the client's legs to the base of the waist elastic at the center back. So the tape measure should be snug against the body, and note the measurement. So this crotch length goes all the way from the front waist through to the back waist. Okay. And then your knee, they say to bend your knee, or have whoever you're measuring bend their knee, and that's the level, that's like the middle of the knee. So when you start at the bottom of the elastic, have the client bend their knee, and that's how far down it is. And then you measure the circumference of the knee. Okay, note the distance though as well, the measurement from the waist. And then you'll go measure 8 inches up from the knee, you'll go around the thigh, do the circumference of the thigh. 5 inches down from the knee, you'll measure the circumference of the calf. You'll measure circumference of the ankle. And then the base, this is like the hem of the pant, the base. We'll calculate the base by taking the low hip measurement. There's a little, it's not a chart, but there's like some guidelines here. So for the slack sloper that we're doing, the base should be 15 to 18 inches. And then you'll plug that in over here to do the calculations with that. And the way you figure out if it's 15 or anywhere between 15 and 18 is that you take the low hip measurement with the low, okay, if the low hip measurement is 38 inches or less, use 15. The bigger the low hip measurement gets, the bigger the base should be. So it's just kind of a ratio there between the low hip and the circumference of the hem. So follow this chart for the circumference of the hem. I'm using 15 because my low hip measurement with ease was 37 and a half. So calculate that for yourself. And then they have you go through several pant lengths to measure for. Okay. You'll plug these. This on the middle of page 206 is just telling you how much ease there is. They're just like the skirt. For the waist, high hip, low hip, they're the same amount of ease as the skirt had. Your ease is written in over on the worksheet, so you don't really have to memorize those. Aren't they? Yes, they're written in. Okay, and then for the waist, high hip, and low hip, it's just like the skirt where you divide by 4. Let me do the low hip. Add the ease, divide by 4, add a 1/4 inch to the front measurement, and subtract a 1/4 inch from the back measurement. Exactly the same. Okay. This chart shows you that for the crotch depth, which is next here, let's see, you add a 1/4 inch. So it's all here on the chart though. Once you figure out what your crotch depth is, because you took the outseam minus the inseam, get the crotch depth, add a 1/4 inch to that, just for a little bit of ease. Okay, and then for these circumference measurements of the knee, thigh, calf, ankle, you're adding a 1.5 inch ease, and that's all explained here. So if you just follow the chart. The weird thing with this is usually, I mean, it's good that you've done this before. Usually with the skirt and the moulage, I would check your calculations to make sure they were correct. You're going to have to do that yourself, so be very careful doing this. I'll have you send me a copy of your calculations for when I grade your slack, but be really careful. Double check them just so you don't start off with something wrong and then your whole thing will be, off. Your length measurements have no ease. And down here for the knee, thigh, calf, instead of dividing this by 4, you're dividing it by 2, right? Because your knee, we'll draft the front pant and the back pant fully. So you just have to divide that by 2, and then they subtract a 1/2 inch from the front and add a 1/2 inch to the back. So your back leg of your pant is always 1 inch wider than your front. Okay, so just follow these as you normally would. Be really careful. I wish I could look at them. It just doesn't make any sense to delay timing and whatnot, and I'm sure you're capable of doing that. And then your base you'll put in here too. It'll be between 15 and 18, and then divide it by 2 and do the same thing here. Length. I just do my pant 36, for the sloper, 36 inches long, so that it saves paper and muslin. You can do whatever you want. If that makes sense to you, that's fine. If that's really short compared to what you may want to do as the pant style you're going to spin off, use your own discretion. But if you want to do 36 inches instead of one of the lengths you measured, that's fine with me. Okay. Now this page 208, again, this is really important, as we've always said, for skirt and moulage, and the sleeve. The block is really important. So take your time creating this. So I'll go through it a little bit. Make sure you're orienting it to where you're standing here. Okay, this is center front, this is the side. same as the skirt. Okay. It's a long rectangle. As we did with the skirt, the width of the whole rectangle is your front low hip calculation. So that's the width of the whole thing. And mine is 36 inches long, and you can do whatever length that you want. Same as the skirt, you're coming down 4.5 inches for the high hip. The low hip is a little tricky, or just the rule's a little bit different. You're measuring the low hip at 4 inches below the high hip, but when you do this block, just come down 3 inches from the high hip. Then it doesn't get in the way of all the crotch curve and everything. Okay, so 4.5 inches down, 3 inches down. The next line is your crotch depth that you calculated from your outseam minus inseam, and then you add a 1/4 inch to it. So that's the crotch depth. The next measurement is your knee, from the waist down to the middle of the knee. And then you'll go up 8 inches for the thigh, go down 6 inches for the calf. Okay, and then my whole thing is 36 inches long. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. You've done that stuff before. Be really careful that everything's a right angle and all these lines are parallel to each other, etc. And you'll have a better result at the end. Let's see. They read this, they go in, they talk about darts here, which is really good. If I feel like it's a repeat, but go ahead and read that. And this is the same as the skirt as well, page 209, and to kind of figure this out before you start. They want to figure out the distance from the center front to the first leg of the dart. And you're going to take the waist measurement with ease, find it on this chart, and the number across from it is that distance from center front to the first leg of the dart. Same thing as the skirt. Let's see. If the back waist, you center the dart. If it doesn't divide evenly by 1/8, the shorter part goes towards the center back. The dart width, same thing. The difference between the full waist and the low hip measurements with ease. So take low hip with ease minus waist with ease, and it should fall into one of these categories. And in my case, I'm doing 1 inch, but just check that out. Same as the skirt. Dart length, whatever the width is, they have the length. They talk about troubleshooting darts here. Check that out. And we will start the draft. Page 209, bottom of the page. And we're doing this very basic, very kind of middle of the road hem, not a wide leg or a skinny leg, just kind of a straight up and down leg, because then you can take something plain like that and spin any style off of it. Okay, so I started, let me see if you can see this whole page. Maybe I'll try and get, it'd be good if you could see the whole thing at once. Might be hard to do. I think I'll start here where you can see the top of the pant. Okay, so they start with the alphabet. A and B are top and bottom, center front, and then C and D, I know you can't see the bottom of the pant, I'll scoot it up when we get down there, are top and bottom on the side seam. Okay, so then E, they just want you to come in 1/2 inch from A, and we'll call that E. And then F, you're just labeling center front at the low hip, they call F. And then G, this is all the waist, this is the same as the waist we did for the skirt. For me, my first leg of my dart is 4 inches from that chart. So I'm going to go in 4 inches from E. And that's G. My dart is 1 inch wide. Again, make sure you check what yours would be for your measurements. H is my 1-inch dart, and then I is the remainder of the waist. And for me, 2 5/8 and a 16th. Okay, I. So make sure E to G and then H to I, you have your full waist measurement there. J is the center of your dart. And then K is the length of your dart, which for me is 4 inches. Check that also. And that's K. So this is all pretty much repeat. Okay, L, you're coming down a 1/2 inch from E. Straight down. That's L. And then we will do kind of a shallow curve from L out to I for our waist, which we did this exact same thing for the skirt. Okay. And then you'll bring your dart legs down to this curve and keep your dart the same width as it was when it was on the straight line. And that is K, L, M, and N. M, and N, and then you can draw on your dart. I am not going to true another dart for you guys. Make sure you true your dart properly. The dart legs need to be the same, and then the bulk needs to be smooth with the waist when it's folded. Okay. Okay, K, M, N, O. O is just the low hip at the side seam. Make sure you got, because it gets kind of confusing with all these lines, make sure before you start you list low hip, high hip, low hip, crotch depth, thigh, knee, I can still see that, and calf. Make sure you list all of them, because with all these lines it does get kind of confusing. Okay, so this is the high hip, O is at the side seam, and then P is the crotch depth at center front, and Q is the crotch depth at the side seam. Okay, and then R is the crotch extension, where we start to make our hook from. There's a chart on page 210 to find what your crotch extension measurement is. So in this, if your low hip with ease added falls wherever it falls on this chart, the length of your crotch extension is over here. So just check that out, low hip plus ease, and then find the component there. So for me, it's 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to come out from P 1 1/4 inches. And call that R. And then this is standard going up from P 2 1/4 inches. Like, oh, and I call that S. It's just a guideline. And then T, you're gonna do a 45-degree angle from P, and you're gonna come out 5/8. It's like between 5/8 and 1 inch. So I'm gonna come out 5/8. And they call that T. And then we're gonna do this crotch curve where we match R, T, and S. I like to use my little ruler. And this For this one, it comes out pretty easily, but take your time to get a nice curve here. Okay. You can also draw in from L to F is the top part of that crotch curve. Make sure that you have a right angle here at the waist for at least a 1/4 inch. 1/2 inch is even better. Okay. And then you'll also come out from I to O for your side seam, just like we did for the skirt. They don't give the high hip, O is at the low hip. Did I say high hip? I can't even remember. They don't give you a component for the high hip, but it's good once you've drawn them in to just go and double check that this is big enough, or not, big enough to accommodate your high hip. Mine is 9, and it's about exactly what it should be. So just double check that. You don't want that to be small. Okay. So we did our crotch curve. We've got the whole kind of top of the pant set up. Okay, so our last letter was T. And then U, we're going to go down to the thigh. Thigh at the side seam is U. And then V is your thigh calculation. It's probably going to come out here past the center front line. Mine's 10 1/4, and I know already it comes past here. That's okay. Just draw that in, and that's V. And that may change again, but we'll label those now, UV. Okay, and then I did this beforehand just so it wouldn't take so much time. Now they want you to divide the base in half. Not the base calculation, but just your original, can you see that? The original bottom of the pant, which is the width of the low hip. Divide that in half, and I already made dots here. I didn't draw on the line yet. This would be W on the base, X on the calf, Y on the knee, Z on the thigh, and then A and B, all the way up to the high hip. And connect those. This is going to be your grain line. So draw that in. And we'll use that also when we come up with the knee circumference. Okay. So drawing that in brings us all the way to a lowercase b. So we do have to go through the alphabet almost twice. So A and B are the top of your grain line. Or if you were having a crease in your pant, pressing a crease into your pant, it's your crease line. Okay, so A, B, and then C and D. Now we come down to the original block, and we actually put in our front base calculation. And in my case, it's 7, so it's 3 1/2 on either side of W, because you want it even on both sides. So that'll be, I'm not sure what your, depending on what you use for your base. If you use 15, yours would be 7 as well. So 3 1/2 from W towards the side seam, and then 3 1/2 from W towards the center front. And that's lowercase c and d. And then you'll draw a straight line from D to Q. Q is at the crotch depth. So all the way from D at the bottom, I think you can see most of that anyway, to Q at the crotch level. Draw a straight line to connect those. Be aware, you know, make sure this at Q it's really smooth. There's not a point there. Make sure you can go back later and check, but D at the bottom should be a right angle, at least for a little bit here. So draw that in carefully. E is the knee level at the side seam, lowercase e. And then F is the calf at the side seam. And then G, you'll take the measurement from E to Y, from the center of the knee to the side seam of the knee, and you'll do the same. Mine's a 4 1/4. You'll do the same from Y towards the center front, which is G. So 4 1/4. So those are the same, and call that G, lowercase g. And then, okay, so now you've got to do a couple things. You here at the thigh moved over a little bit because we connected Q with D at the hem. So U's moved over. So we've got to scoot V over also, or this line doesn't accommodate the thigh measurement anymore. So again, mine's 10 1/4. So this is going to scoot out a pretty solid 1/8 of an inch. And that's my new V. And then what we'll do now is, to do the inseam of the leg, we'll connect C at the hem to G in a straight line. And then RVG will be this bottom part of this curve for the top part of the inseam. So let's see, this is a little bit, you kind of want one thing, and it's more apparent on the back, but one thing you don't really want to do here is make it you don't want it to look like a beak and be really pointy. You kind of want to come straight down from the crotch curve if you can. And this, take your time. I'm going to try and go fast, but I want to get past V and not cut too much off of the thigh. And then get down to the knee measurement at G. If you have to adjust G at G a little bit, that's fine. Oop. That's pretty good. And again, make sure that at G, at the knee here, there's not a point. It's just a smooth line. Okay. And I think that's it. Let's see. So our last letter was G, H. Oh yeah, and then once you draw that straight line, as you say, H is at the calf, this component at the calf. And I think that's it. You'll want to, calf guideline, okay. You're gonna measure, and we'll talk about this later. LSTR, yeah. You'll want to measure your front crotch curve here from L, S, T, and R, and we'll use that after we'll We'll check that after we draft the back. So you want to measure that now. And then you have your grain line already, do all your information. Oh, let me do notches really quick. So true your dart, like we said. You'll notch the dart. Mark the apex 1/2 inch up. Make an actual hole in the paper. Circle it in red. You'll notch the low hip at the side seam and the center front. And then you'll notch the knee at the side seam and the center front. Make sure you're notching, physically cutting into the paper. You will add seam allowance to this, 1/4 at the waist, 1/2 inch everywhere else except for the hem. You'll do 1 inch. And the hem, you'll have to draw in the 1 inch hem, fold it up, and use your roller on each side and fold it back down to get the right shape, like we did with the sleeve. Okay, so 1 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. And the we'll do the back next. What you want to do with the front, and this is kind of unique, is take the front and trace it. And the way we start to draft the back pant is from the front pant. It's important to trace it to where you're standing here. You're standing at the side seam. So you can see this dotted line here is your front pant. That's kind of underneath the back once it's drafted. So use your roller and your tracing paper and trace this so that you can see what's been traced, and you can orient your body with it this way. And we'll do the back next. Okay, hopefully you can see this. It is my traced front pant, but now it's the opposite of what it was before, where the side seam's right here and the center front is over here. And I drew in, make sure you draw in every single line and then label them: calf, knee, thigh, crotch level, etc. And draw in, trace as well your these components where you did the diagonal, the 45-degree angle, and the extension. Okay, those are important. And then you'll label it. A, B is center front at the hem. C is the side seam, and then D is side seam at the hem. And then E and F. E is this point, and F is the crotch point, extension point. So label those. You're going to need them when you draft the back. Okay. Let's see. Get the book over here. So first thing we'll do is, let's see, we're at F. So G. Okay, you're going to come out 1/2 inch from C and call it G. You want it to be exact. You don't want this point 1/2 inch out to be higher or lower than this point, because we're creating the side seam for the back, and it should be the exact same length as the front. So sometimes it's good to use the high hip as a guide and come out 1/2 inch from C, but make it exactly at the same level as C is. And that's G. And then H, let's see if I can do this so you can see. H, you're going to come out from D at the hem. You're also going to come out 1/2 inch. Okay. And you have already checked that, I don't know if I talked about this, make sure all of, adjust if you need to, but make sure all your outer corners are right angles at the hem and at the waist here on the front. Okay, so you come out G and H, And then you can just fill in. It's exactly the same as adding seam allowance. So I'm just going to do hashtags along this line. You can do that and then fill in, or you can go all the way solid all the way up, but for time I'm just going to. So your side seam for the back is going to be a 1/2 inch, identical shape, identical length, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch out from the front. Okay, so take your time doing that and fill in if you do a hashtag. And this, we'll double check that this is a right angle, the front, the back side seam later. Okay, so your side seam is now a 1/2 inch out from the front. Okay, and that is HI. Now we'll go from A, which is the center front waist. Just follow the shape of this line and go up 1.25 inches. That's standard. It'll be the same for everybody. So just go up 1.25 inches, kind of following that same shape. And that is I. And then you'll draw a straight line from G to I. So you can see the center back waist is a lot higher than the center front. Okay, and now is when you can kind of make sure that your side seam intersection is a right angle for at least like 1/4 inch. Okay, then you'll come in from G for the first leg of the dart. And remember, you're centering the dart. So for me, I come in 3 1/8. This will be a kind of a repeat from the front or from the skirt. 3 1/8, and that's J. The back dart is the same width as the front dart. So mine was 1 inch, so it's 1 inch again. That's K. And then the remainder of the waist is L, JKL. Mine is 3 1/16. So the smaller portion goes towards the center back. Yeah, center back. JKL. And then M is the middle of the dart. N is the length of the dart. Use the high hip and draw a perpendicular line to the high hip to get the angle of the center of this dart. It's kind of a weird angle. Oh, okay, so mine's 4 inches, same as the front. And then you can draw in the legs. Okay, and true this dart as well, very well. Take good care doing that. MN. Oops, MN. So we're on O. O is just the low hip at the side seam. So extend this line. And this is O. And then P, you're going to come from the side seam towards the center back for your low hip calculation. In my case, it's 9 1/8. P. And then Q is, now, so here's our crotch depth from the front. The back crotch depth is 1/2 inch lower. So I just draw the whole line. and then come down from E, from the front that we traced from the front, and that's Q. Wait. Yes, Q. Okay, and now there's no chart for the crotch extension in the back. It's a weird math calculation, and it's in the book. It is the, what is it? It's the low hip divided by 2 minus 3/4 of an inch. How they figured that out, I have no idea. So yeah, take your low hip divided by 2 and subtract 3/4 of an inch from that. In my case, from Q, I'm going out 3 3/4 and a 1/16. It's a lot different than the front, the length of the back crotch extension. Okay, so you'll come out Q to, what is it? R, QR, that makes sense, is your back crotch extension. And then you'll come up, create a 45-degree angle again. In the back, it is about 1 3/4. I think they say, and hopefully it's the same in your book, like 1.5 to 2 inches. I'm gonna do mine 1 3/4. Actually, I'm gonna do it 1.5. I think that works out better for this particular draft. But double check the book. And that is S. Then you're going to connect R, S, P, and L for your back crotch curve. So take your time. I'm going to try and do it fast as usual so that it doesn't take forever. But take your time and make it smooth. Okay. Double check too that L is a right angle for a tiny bit, or else your center back waist will come to a point. Okay, I'm not going to take all this time. That's pretty good. I came out a little farther from P, but I think that's okay. If I had more time, I would. This looks good to me. This is a right angle and looks good. I could make this come all the way back to P. It's out about 1/8. That's fine. That's okay. But if I had more time, I would perfect that a little better. Okay, so now we've got our back crotch curve, and we ended at S, right? Q, R, S, T, T, U, and V. We're going to go back down to the hem and come out from B towards the center back 1/2 inch as well as we did on the side seam. So we'll come out 1/2 inch here at the hem, call it T, and then I'm just going to do my like I'm adding seam allowance, because we come out 1/2 inch through the calf. We call that U, and then the knee, and we call that V. Okay. W, where is W? Okay, so At this point, you can draw in your inseam from R to V and make sure that V is not a point and it's smooth. This is where one thing that happens more often, quite often, is that this in the back, especially with this longer crotch extension, if you draw in the inseam curved like this, where it looks like a duck beak or something, a bird's beak, that is, you do not want to do that. You want to make sure you're just kind of coming straight down from here. The more, I mean, you know, pants are can be difficult, and everything kind of, you know, you because of the crotch curve, if you change one thing thinking you're fixing something, it can affect something else. It's very interrelated. But if this is super arched in, that can be problematic for the hang of a pant. So that's nice to be, this is a good shape right here. Okay, enough about that. And then W, okay, so the thigh, you'll come out to this 1/2 inch out on the side seam of the back and call that W. And then X is where the thigh intersects the inseam. And you don't have to, you can check it to make sure that this clears the calculation for the thigh, but you don't have to make it equal the calculation for the thigh. For example, what's mine? Like mine's 11 1/4, my back thigh calculation. 11 1/4 is right here. Okay, you're not gonna go from here and go to that thigh measurement. You just know that you've cleared it fully and you're fine. Okay, okay, X and then Y and Z are the knee here at the side seam was Y, and then the calf at the side seam is Z. And then you've drawn this in already because of tracing it from the front. There we go. But they kind of go, A through F are all these components of the grain line. And so you don't have to calculate that again or anything, just trace that from the front. And that is your back pant. After, and again for the back, you'll have 1/2 inch everywhere, 1 inch at the hem, and 1/4 inch at the waist. True your dart. 2 things you need to do after you've drafted both pieces. This is all on page 212. Measure the inseam front and back. They should be, oftentimes the if the back is, and this is all, like I said, page 212, if the back is up to 1/4 inch shorter than the front, don't worry about it. That's fine. This is kind of on the bias, and you can stretch that to meet, and they say it kind of helps the back of the pant from sagging if you have to stretch that a little bit. So just measure them both and make sure you're in that range. Then you're going to measure the front and back crotch curves. Okay, and you'll make sure that they correspond with your crotch length that you measured. If it's too small, read that in here. It can be, let's see, it can be longer is fine, but if it's too short, you would have to evenly add. You'd cut the low hip, open up front and back, and add here to make these crotch curves longer so that they equal your crotch length that was measured. The other thing you can do, you can only add up to 1 inch here and here. You want to do these evenly. If you still need more, that seems like you've gone terribly wrong if you are like over 2 inches too short. But anyway, if you need more, you can come straight out at the crotch curve, at the crotch point, both front and back evenly, to make sure that is long enough. So I want you guys to check those. Your side seams should match exactly because it's just the same thing. If you kept the top came straight out from C, your inseam, double check that, and then double check that the crotch curve is long enough. And then you will cut these out in muslin and sew them up in muslin. And I'll show you Monday on Zoom how to sew the pant. Okay?